Okay, we've been talking about how to begin a story, and there are a lot of different methods that you might use. I'd like you to think through these so that you've got a lot of things at your disposal when you start your story. I'm going to show you 9 methods. There are probably many others. These are 9 ways we might begin a story, and we'll get a couple of examples for them. Now take notes of these 9 because you're going to need them in the exercise. One of the ways a lot of people begin a story is by giving a very general statement. So we're going to call that first one starting with a generalization. And let me give you an example of that. This is from Amy Tan's story, Two Kinds. My mother believed you could be anything you wanted to be in America. Now think of your story. You may have some ideas of where you could give that kind of general statement. The second way we might begin a story is to focus on a person and to give a description of a particular person. Let's get an example of that. This is from V.S. Pritchett's story, The Sailor. He was lifting his knees high and putting his hand up when I first saw him. As if crossing the road through that stringing rain, he were breaking through the bead curtain of a Pernambuco bar. I knew he was going to stop me. So second method, describe a person. Sometimes we begin our story by telling about what's happened before. We give a summary of the story, or we're going to call it for number 3, a narrative summary. And let's get an example of that. This is from Graham Greene's story, Dr. Crombie. An unfortunate circumstance in my life has just recalled to mind a certain Dr. Crombie and the conversations I used to hold with him when I was young. He was the school doctor until the eccentricity of his ideas became generally known. So a narrative summary of what's happened before that gets the reader ready. Let's go to the next one. We can start our story with dialogue, and we start then right in the middle of the story with things already happening and people talking. This one's from a story in The White Knight by Ann Beattie. Don't think about a cow, Matt Brinkley said. Next method, we might put several characters on stage, as it were, but not have any dialogue. So we're going to call this several characters, but no dialogue. Just to abbreviate that. This is from Frank O'Connor's story. During the lunch hour, the male clerks usually went out. Here the first set of characters have left, leaving myself and 3 girls behind. The writer, along with 3 other girls, are there. So we've created the characters of the story, but they haven't said anything yet. Our next one is a combination. We might put a setting with a character. And in this case, probably one character. This one's from Anton Chekhov's story, The Birthday Party. After dinner, with its 8 courses and endless conversation, here the setting begin, Olga, whose husband's birthday was being celebrated, went out into the garden. A character plus a setting. Another way is we might have our narrator, person telling the story, think back and bring up memories. We're going to call that a reminiscent narrator. So a narrator reminiscing about the past. It's from Peter Taylor's story. I was already formally engaged, as we used to say, to the girl I was going to marry. See how he's thinking back in the past and bringing us up to date on who these people are. Sometimes, to go way in the past, we set up that the narrator of the story is actually a child. And we're going to give some clues for that. So let's make this a child narrator. I'll give you two examples. First one is from Tony Bambara's story, Raymond's Run. I don't have much work to do around the house, like some girls, and the girls and the work around the house maybe tip us off that that's a child. Another one from Ellen Gilchrist, Victory Over Japan. When I was in 3rd grade, I knew a boy who had to have 14 shots in the stomach as a result of a squirrel bite. Both the topic and the fact that she tells us that this is back when she was in 3rd grade give us a child narrator. Finally, we can establish a point of view. And that may be a first-person point of view, or we may set up another character as a third person. We're going to call it POV, point of view. Here's one in the first person. Since Dr. Whalen was late and there were no recent newspapers in the waiting room, I turned to the other patient and said, as a concerned person and your brother, I ask you, without meaning to offend, how did you get that scar on the side of your face? So we know who's talking in the story. Let's try one with third person. This is from Mary Robinson's book, The Coach. The August 2-a-day practice sessions were 67 days away, the coach calculated. It's a third person, but we're going to see it from his eyes. So I hope you've noted those 9: generalization, description of person, narrative summary, with dialogue, several characters, no dialogue, setting with a character, a reminiscent narrator, child narration, or point of view, either first or third person. In your exercise, you're going to be trying several of those to see if you can tell the same story in different ways.